Welcome to the BetterWallet Podcast. Today, we're going to hear from Darius Smith. If you don't know who Darius is, the founder and owner of From My Wealth is My Worth. He is a financial coach. He's a creator. He's an entrepreneur, two-time entrepreneur, actually. And I wanted to bring him on the show because we often talk about this topic of wealth generation, but sometimes it's hard to build wealth if it's just up to us to do so. And we don't introduce technology, right? So Darius happens to teach how we can take the human factor out of investing and money management so we can build wealth without having to lift a finger, right? Without even knowing that you're doing it. That's the best type of wealth, when you're building wealth and you literally don't even know it's happening in the background. During this episode, you're going to learn a lot about tips on how to automate your wealth. You're going to learn about Darius and his story, how he's building wealth for himself, his family, and for his 14-year-old son, which I guess is a part of his family as well. But he's 14 months old and he already has an investment portfolio. So you'll learn about that. You'll learn also book recommendations if you are an aspiring entrepreneur or you're looking to get your money together, or you just need a book that's going to help you boost your overall skill level when it comes to your job. So you have to listen to the episode to learn a little bit more. But before I dive in, I wanted to thank everyone for reviewing the BetterWallet podcast. It means a lot to me. Every time I get a review for, the podcast on any of the different platforms, I read them and it lightens up my day. So thank you for leaving a review. If you have not done so, please leave a review for the Better Wallet Podcast, especially if you've listened to the podcast more than once. Please leave a review with literally anything. Better Wallet Podcast is top 25 on Buzzsprout, the platform that I use. And it is ranked top 5% globally for all podcasts. But the goal is to become the number one podcast in the financial space. But I would settle for top 1% on listen notes and to be also ranked on Spotify and Apple. That's the end goal. So, guys, ratings are the best currency for podcasts. They're the best currency for podcasts. So please leave a review, and that will mean the world to me. Okay, let's dive into the episode.
Welcome to the BetterWallet Podcast, a podcast where we talk to everyday people who have changed their lives through managing their money. We talk about their money journeys, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of the BetterWallet Podcast. As you guys know, the BetterWallet Podcast is all about demystifying the topic of money and sharing powerful money stories from people who truly beat the odds. Today, we have Darius Smith on the line from Wealth is My Worth. If you don't know who Darius is, he is a money coach, a creator. He's an entrepreneur. And as I mentioned in the intro, Darius and his wife have paid off, get this, $170,000 of debt at the height of their debt-free journey. And they've been able to build their investment portfolio using automation techniques. So I wanted to bring him onto the podcast to show you guys how you can put your wealth on autopilot. Welcome, Darius.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Marc.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it. Let's not waste any time. But first, let's hit this icebreaker question. Then I want to start talking a little bit about your background. So the icebreaker question is, prepare yourself. If you can only have one app on your phone, what would it be? You have to delete all the other ones. You can only have one app.
One app. I'm going to say, man, like the phone is definitely for communication. So I'm tied between like my music app, because Apple Music hit every time, or the messaging app. I think I'm going the texting app. I don't know if that's like a cheat code or not, but like I got to communicate. Don't call me, by the way. I need to give me the text.
So you have to keep up with everyone, right? But you will get rid of Instagram. You'll get rid of all the other ones.
Yeah, that stuff can go out. Every year, I think I get rid of it for half the year anyway, until like I'm back, like I need to be posting. But
yeah, if I wasn't operating a business on Instagram, I definitely would delete it. I got to the point of deleting my personal account way before BetterWallet. I was like, I'm not learning anything. I'm not growing. And then I learned about the debt-free community and learned more about just the world of finance. And I was like, oh, I'm actually learning something.
Right.
But initially, I didn't follow people that was going to be teach me anything about that I needed to know. I wasn't learning anything financial from Chris Brown or Drake. So that was the reason why. Or the Shade Room. So let's jump into it. Give the audience a little bit of your background and why you decided to start Wealth is My Worth.
Yeah, so I've always wanted to be super rich, and my idea was like
Facts. Like everyone,
entrepreneurship.
right?
Right, exactly. And me, I think most people think like the way to get rich is entrepreneurship. And
Mhm.
I've always been like an entrepreneur and just, I don't know, I think it's always been in me, but this is my only path. So what I did is after college, I decided like, hey, I'm going to actually start this business. Started indoor dog park. It was a really cool idea. It took off. It was really good. I wasn't the greatest entrepreneur. Most people aren't the first time around. I lost a
Mhm.
bunch of money. I ain't gonna say I lost a bunch of money. I got lended a bunch of money that I shouldn't have taken. And after the business ended up closing, because I wasn't a good shepherd over that money, I had all this debt. And it wasn't just the business debt. I also had student loans because I had just graduated college. Me and my wife had both bought a car. We had also just gotten married. We didn't finance our wedding, thank God, but we did travel quite a bit through college. So we had accumulated quite a bit of debt. I think at the height of it, right after closing the business, we were about $170,000. I had to figure out first off how to get us out of this hole, and how am I going to figure out like how to help us to get rich since this path didn't work. So I started reading. I started listening to podcasts like heavily, watching a bunch of YouTube, reading more, and just following. I curated my social media, like you said, to
Mhm.
be things that can help me learn. And I don't know, I just kind of ended up on this path of financial independence and learning about that. Before you can work towards financial independence, though, you have to work on your debt. You have to get your finances in order. So I took information that I got from books. There's two specific books that I used and kind of merged all those things together and helped me to build a plan to really just get us out of that debt. And that's what we did. It took us like 2.5 years. We paid off everything but the student loans, but we also grew a pretty good investment portfolio during that time as well.
I love that story. I love that story. Just the story of entrepreneurship, because there's probably a lot of listeners on the line that want to start a business, and a lot of times it doesn't start off where you're making a bunch of money up front.
No.
Sometimes you have to take loans. You
Yeah.
fail. Like more often do I hear people say, "Hey, like I had to fail a couple years to figure out what worked and what didn't." And
Definitely.
one thing that I've learned throughout my journey is that failure is one step towards success. So now that you learn from that, quote unquote mistake, now
Yeah.
you can then build on top of it and build something even better for the people that you serve, which is
Absolutely.
awesome. I love seeing you on the other side of it and not completely giving up on entrepreneurship and deciding to, continue to build, which is awesome. So you talked a little bit about, building wealth, wanting to be wealthy, wanting to be rich. How is automation helping you build your wealth for you, your wife, and, for your son, your
Yeah.
14-month-old?
So for us, automation takes the decision part out of it. I think everybody knows exactly how to build wealth. Everybody knows how to lose weight. You
Mhm.
work out more, you eat less, and then you'll lose weight. The same thing with building wealth. You make more money or save more money, invest more money, whatever you want to call it on that side, and you spend less. Like it's a simple formula, but every day we have to make decisions. Do we buy this? Do we get a bigger house? Do we apply for a new job? Like there's a lot of decisions that we make, whether there's conscious or subconscious. Automation takes the decisioning out of it. So that way the decisions that are made to invest, you don't have to wake up and say, hey, I don't have to remember to do it. Second off, once I do remember, I don't have to say, dang, the shoes did come out and I do want to buy those, but I do want to invest in Nike rather than just buy the Nikes. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So you don't have to actually make that decision because it's already done. When I woke up today, the money was already transferred from one account to the other. And I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to remember. I didn't have to make any decisions. It's already done. The decision was made years ago. So
Right. No, it's a really good point. You don't have to think about the action of it. Like I always say that, like, in order for you to build wealth, you have to take the you out of it and make it automated. But it helps you to build wealth. And then also just kind of putting my financial advisor hat on, when you are going and you're investing, it also takes the decision making process out of that too. Because if
yeah,
stocks aren't doing so well that day, which is probably the best time to be buying, you could, as a human, say, okay, well, I'm not going to buy right now. And then
right.
next week, you'll say the same thing, next month, next year. But if you are able to automate that, then the money goes in. You don't have to think about a thing,
Absolutely.
automatic contributions and then automatic investing with mutual funds. So you hit it right on the head with that. And I'm happy you were able to bring that up. So for the investors on the line that are just like, hey, like, I get it. Like, I need to automate my wealth. What technologies should they be using to not only help them to budget, but to also build their wealth? Because I know when you teach it, you talk about it collectively instead of like one or the other.
Yeah, I think it's going to surprise you or shock you what my answer is going to be. But the answer that the way that I teach it, especially for the budgeting side, so the budgeting and then the investing side are a little bit different. But on the budgeting side, the number one thing that people need to use that people are not using as far as the automation piece is direct deposit. Obviously, we are all using direct deposit, but what you need to do instead is you need to split your direct deposits to a separation of concerns into specific accounts. So when I teach people automation, I have different accounts that you're direct depositing in. Obviously, you have a bills account, which is your account that you don't touch for anything other than bills. You don't buy shoes out of it. You don't go out to eat out of it. You don't do anything. You know exactly how much money is coming in and you know how much is coming out. You automatically from your job to your bills account because you don't want, decision making to happen in between, but just automate it. Then you have a fun money account because in this wealth journey, you need to enjoy it. You can't just deprive yourself of fun. You can't deprive yourself of just enjoying. If you burn out, you're going to quit. You're going to end up back on your old habits. So I always say, put some money aside for enjoyment. And if you don't do it in the beginning, because when we first started, we couldn't do it, then that's okay. Get yourself to a point where you can. If for a certain amount of time you can't, that's understandable. And then in between, there's optional amounts of accounts. I know people always think I'm crazy because I have so many different accounts, but you don't spend out of everything. And I can get into that later if you want to. But in the middle, you have to have at least one more account. And this is just your variable spending. So things that change, things like you might eat out more one month or less another month. You might drive more or less another month. You might travel. So there's a lot of different things that go into that variable account, but you're also automatically investing. So that's not direct deposit unless it's from your 401k, which is obviously something we should take advantage of. But your investment accounts are already taken care of too. So if you've already invested, if you've already paid your bills, and you've already put some money aside to have fun, so you know exactly how much you're going to spend on that, the rest of your money is just the rest of your money. You don't really have to budget the rest of it. So you just have an account that you regularly spend out of, which is usually what everyone's doing now, but without prioritizing the automation to the other account. So direct deposit is literally the one thing that people aren't taking advantage of by using multiple accounts.
Got it. Yeah, no, one remark and then a question. So the remark is what I do currently is the money comes in and then from there, I use the bank account as being like a warehouse, right? Where I keep my money inventory. And then from there, I then dispense the money wherever I feel like I need it, right? So yesterday I got paid from the business. And then from there, I said, okay, well, I need, $150 for haircut or, personal expenses. So knowing that I can pay my barber through Venmo, I send that money, 100 and whatever dollars to Venmo. And then from there, I have it, set aside. But what you're saying is before you even get to your bank account, make sure your direct deposit set up that's going to multiple accounts that all have a specific goal. Let's call them buckets, if you will.
Correct.
So you have those different buckets and then you spend whatever is in there based off whatever your budget has allocated to it, which is a really interesting concept that I haven't actually really thought about it before. So here's the question. When, let's say I work for a corporation, I have a W-2, what do you need to do? Do you need to talk to benefits about this on, just making sure it's going to these separate accounts? And I guess the follow-up question with that is, do they ever provide pushback if you're trying to send it to multiple different accounts? Because sometimes they might just say, no, we can only do one account number, one routing number, and that's it.
Yeah. So most modern payroll companies like ADP or Gusto or any of the more modern ones have it to where you can set it up with multiple accounts. So most jobs can do this. You can set it up. You can have 4 or 5 accounts. You can say a specific dollar amount, which is what I teach people. And I show you how to decide how much to put into each account, or you can put a percentage. So if you make about $10,000 a month, you can say 10% goes here, 20% goes there. If you don't have this capability, you can only do one. Then that's where automatic transfers come in. So I can show you how to do it either way. Direct deposit is better because it just happens. There's zero time in between where you can make a mistake, but the automatic transfers, you just have to watch it on that day. But either way, like just making sure that you have one account for one purpose rather than one account for multiple purposes is like the key.
Got it. Interesting. No, guys, he's dropping gems right now. So you guys write that down. Like if you're looking to separate your direct deposit money, set up different accounts, and that might be a way of completely taking the human factor out of it. So we mentioned just a second ago that you have a little one. So first and foremost, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So 14-month
Right,
girl.
right.
So what accounts do you have set up for him? And then also, how are you going about automating his wealth?
Yeah. So anytime you have a minor or anybody under 18 years old, you have to set up any kind of account is going to be in a custodial account, meaning you manage it, but it's someone else's benefit. So my son he only has 2 accounts right now. He has a high yield savings account and he has a brokerage account. So pretty much what happens is anytime we have birthdays or Christmas, his birthday is right by Christmas, so it kind of sucks. But in Christmas time or birthday time, my wife makes the registry on what the stuff that he might want or what people can get him. And I send out whatever. Somebody wants to give him money, this is where you can put his money. My dad gives him a decent amount of money every year. And I actually put, I think, $150 every single month into his account, which we're going to bump it up as he gets a little bit older. But we put this into his account. And from his savings account, we put money into his brokerage account. In his brokerage account, we just buy index funds. So every year, I think at 150, that's 300. So that would be $1,800 goes into investing just for me. And then if he has birthday money or something like that, he also gets additional money into his savings account as well. So hopefully by the time he's 16, he can buy his own car. I don't got to do it.
Right. So really, I love the strategy and how you're going about building wealth for him, even before he turns 2, right?
Yeah.
I think that's really critical for like building generational wealth. So you went to school, UNLV. What are your thoughts on him going off to college and having all his money invested and not be able to qualify for student loan or maybe student aid? That might hurt him, right? Because he's going to be 18 and, hopefully has thousands of dollars. What are your views on that?
Yeah. So I think not talking about you, but sometimes people complain about not getting the benefits of like what we give to the less fortunate. And it's like, that's the worst thing. Like, this is a great problem to have. Like, I'd love to have too much money to be able to get government assistance. You know what I mean? So it's not something that I consider. And then I think the whole college topic is a whole nother hot button that I could go deep down into, but I'm not a huge fan of just automatically going to college. I don't think I'm going to push college on them. Sometimes I wish I didn't go, but that's a whole entire another podcast. But
another podcast episode. Yeah, we'll get you on. We'll talk about, is college worth it, considering how much you have to pay currently. But no, it's a really good point. And that question was more of like tongue in cheek, because a lot of folks, especially people that have like really young kids, they bring that question up to me all the time, where I'll say, put money into a UTMA, UGMA, custodial account, whatever it might be. And that would always come up where they're just like, wow, but they won't qualify for federal aid. I'm like, you have to choose one. Do you want to be rich, or do you want to qualify for federal aid? The goal is to be rich. And if you are in the situation where that's a big factor, then likely at home, you are probably not worrying about money all too much, right? Like, I get it. Like, I understand I qualify for federal aid, but my parents were both extremely broke. I didn't have any money. So it's like, you have to choose one. And my hope is that if you're doing the right things, 20% of the money that your child has, which is normally the amount that the federal aid would look at, that 20% isn't going to be anything that you're going to even remotely care about. Because you're going to be like, I'm just going to write the check for them to go off to school. If you decide to send them off to a really expensive university, you went to UNLV, I went to Penn State, both really great schools that are extremely expensive. But I'll say this, 18 years from now, let's say I have a child today, 18 years from now, I don't know if we'll be in the same environment that we are today. There has been a lot of changes within that space for when it comes to just like student loan debt. I'm not going to get into that topic, but just schools charging as much as they are for tuition and fees and all that stuff. I would be very surprised if companies don't start coming out with like certification programs that are a fraction of the cost or even free in order for you to get the same level of education that you would get from a 4-year university. So I guess we'll see, but I can see them disrupting that market. And don't get me wrong, I love my time at Penn State. I had a lot of drunken times and great football games and everything. But, coming out of school with $80,000 of debt, $50,000 of debt being from school, it's a big hole that you have to dig yourself out of. Luckily, I was able to do that, but it took a lot of time to do that. And, you were able to do the same thing, but it's not easy. So hopefully they go about, going in the right direction with that. You mentioned before about books that you love that have money tips in there. And one you specifically mentioned on your website, Profit First. Could we talk about some books that people should pick up right now if they want to improve their finances and automate their wealth?
Absolutely. So as far as books that are good, so my favorite, as far as just a good foundation of what to do with your money, is I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. Common, popular, it works. If you follow those strategy, you will do great. And the other good book that I always say that I mixed in is Profit First. So Profit First is actually a business book. When I started the business, I read it. And what it teaches you is how to manage your business finances using what you call like the bucketing system, where you have separate accounts, you separate the concerns. And I just use that strategy with the personal finance. So Profit First teaches you how to take money and only use the money for what it's for. And once you run out, you don't actually, like if your bank accounts, think about this right now. If your bank account gets to zero, you don't continue to go spend more from another bank account. So when I teach people to separate their different bank accounts when they're budgeting, if your fund money gets to zero, you're out. Like you got to wait till that fund money comes back. You don't start using your bills money because once it's separated, it's stupid. Like you would think everybody knows not to do that. But when it's all on one account, you don't know where your fund money stops and where your bills start. So this is the reason of why separating your different accounts out makes sense. So that's the second book. There's another book that I use for just building wealth, which is The Simple Path of Wealth by, I believe, J.L. Collins. Talks all about index funds. And if anybody wants to really nerd out, Tony Robbins has a book called Money Master the Game. It's really long. It gets really technical. It's all about investing, but it talks about mutual funds a lot and index funds and why only about 4% of people beat the market. And as far as like mutual fund, like active managers, I'm actually not a big fan. I'm actually a hater of mutual funds. There are good ones out there, but it's hard to figure out which ones are the good ones. And index funds are so efficient and the fees are so low. So that's one that you can get into if you're like really learning money and you really want to get into the nuts and bolts of it. That's another one that I like to shout out.
Yeah. So one quick remark. So ETFs, mutual funds. So guys, just remember that mutual funds were created before ETFs, or what he's calling index funds. I tend to bucket both of them under the topic of index funds, but mutual funds were created first. ETFs were, kind of think of them as being like mutual fund 2.0. Right. They're more tax efficient. You can trade in and out of them throughout the day if you choose to do so. They're cheaper, lower minimums normally. Now you can get into ETFs for $1 with fractional shares, but I hear you with mutual funds as well. I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm a hater of them. I think there's an area for them. Like, for example, you can't do automatic investments with ETFs just yet, but you could do that with mutual funds. I use that with for my solo 401k, but yeah, they're a little archaic at this point. I mean, in ETFs, you can really customize them as you want. So that was my first point. The other point I want to make is that if I'm not too blind, I could see behind you and it says Great by Choice.
Yes.
Great by Choice completely changed my life and how I viewed like it, from not only being an employee, but also just wanting to be just great in person. I'm like just being a great person in general, and then eventually a great entrepreneur. So I would also recommend Great by Choice as being an amazing book if you're just looking to level up your life in general.
Absolutely. Great eyes, man. I've never actually seen anybody point out any of the books that are behind me. So
yeah, I'm a little blind, but I can see, I recognize the book because I want to say, I used to have it in my office. Great by Choice and From Good to Great, both by the same author, but it's not in here right now. But that was like, it was one of the first books in my professional career that I read from cover to cover because I was there were concepts in there that I didn't know before. Being a kid from the hood, like I never really like thought about it the way that, they're able to describe it within the book. And another one is Strength Finders 2.0. The reason why I like that book is because I lived a life where a lot of people told me what my weaknesses were. It was always like, oh, you're not that great at that, or you can improve in that. And it's also me in my head telling myself, okay, you're not good at these things. But Strength Finders was a great book because it actually told me, hey, like based off of this test that you just took, that took an hour, these are the things that you're really good at. I've used each one of those skills within that book or the results that I got to become an even better employee, an even better person, and a much better entrepreneur, because I know that, they kick out different themes like, hey, like I'm great at relating with people, or like I love context. Like even before we got onto this call, I was asking you questions about your life because I love to understand like where people come from. I'm a strategist, so I'm always thinking of the X and O's. So that's all like really important to me, but that all came from me understanding who I truly was, my strengths that came from that book. So guys, write those books down. You want to go through them rapid fire again, the books that you recommended, just so people can write them down if they're listening to the podcast?
Sure. First one was Ramit Sethi's book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. The second one was Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. I'm sure I said that wrong, but it's Profit First. You'll find it. Yep. The third one, I believe, was J.L. Collins' book, Simple Path to Wealth. And then the fourth was Tony Robbins' Money Mastered the Game. And then I think you jumped in with the next ones.
Yeah. So Great by Choice, like blank on it. Is it Jim Collins?
It is, yes.
Jim Collins. The other one was Great by Choice and From Good to Great.
Good to Great. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was the first iteration of that book, also by Jim Collins. And then Strength Finders 2.0 is, for some reason, Clifton is in my head.
I haven't actually heard of that one. Yeah. I need to check that one out.
But Gallup. So people who do like the surveys and everything, Gallup, they're a part of this book somehow. I don't know if they helped to produce it, but Strength Finders 2.0 from Gallup. But yeah, Tom Wraith is the one that wrote it. So Strength Finders 2.0 is the second iteration of it. So do that one. Don't do the first one. Go ahead.
The whole mindset thing, I know you were talking about how Good to Great and Great by Choice, they both help you with your mindset. And literally, mindset is everything about everything when it comes to building wealth, when it comes to entrepreneurship, anything. If you don't believe that you could be wealthy, then you really can't. But if you believe that you are worthy of $1 million, then you will get there. But you have to like really believe that. So all these books are good, but if you can read something that will get your mind right and tell you that you are worthy, which is kind of like why I named my company the way I did, but just let everybody know that like you are worthy of wealth. You are worthy, no matter where you came from, no matter what you've been through, no matter where you're starting, even you can build wealth. So yeah.
Amen to that. And that's an amazing way to end it. Thank you so much, Darius, for coming on and teaching us so many gems on how you can go about automating your wealth. I even took down some notes on what I'm going to maybe play around with here in the next month or so. But for anyone who's looking for you online, where can they find you?
Definitely. You can find me at wealthismyworth.com. And you can also find me on social media at wealthismyworth, anywhere, just about anywhere, mostly on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. And also catch me at my workshop. I always do a workshop every single month. It's completely free. It's about learning how to get yourself ready for financial independence. So awesome. Check that out as well.
Check it out, guys. We're going to put all that in the show notes so you can easily click on it. Darius, thank you for coming on. Thank you for dropping all types of gems. And guys, we will see you on the next episode. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the BetterWallet Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you found any value, we'd appreciate a rating and review.